Hey, podcast listening people, happy Friday to you. Welcome into B2B Mentors. Today we have a guest interview, and I'm excited to nerd out about marketing with you guys. Do me a tiny favor, make sure you share this out. If you find any value, right, hopefully one little golden nugget out of this is all it takes to change what you're doing in the right way. All right, if you find any value, make sure you share this video. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and the LinkedIn. And also you can find B2B Mentors on all your favorite podcast apps. So make sure you go subscribe there. Please do me a tiny favor. Go to iTunes, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. Today, I have my guest, Steve Hartert, with me today. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at JotForm with responsibilities for marketing programs, brand management, corporate partnerships. Prior to joining JotForm, Steve was president of Hartert Associates, a marketing consultancy that worked with B2B and B2C companies. Steve has more than 30 years of marketing management experience and has worked with companies such as the Walt Disney Company, the Ministry of Transportation, Sydney in Australia, and All Student Loans. Steve, welcome, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Connor. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. I enjoy chatting and just nerding out about marketing. It's like my favorite pastime hobby. I could never make a dime from it and still love doing it. So I'm excited to have you here. And
yeah, I've been doing it a long time, and every day I learn something new, and it's fun. I have so much fun doing this.
Do you, at this stage in your marketing life, like are there still things that surprise you about the world of, marketing nowadays?
There is, because I mean, every day there's like a new channel. I mean, usually you're looking at like social media, but there's a new channel to reach your customers. There's new techniques to reach your customers. The technology changes how to reach your customers. So it's, the beauty of it is it streamlines the process and makes it much more efficient. So if you're looking for particular niches or particular types, it's cheaper to do it, it's more efficient to do it, and you can get your metrics, and you can study what works and what doesn't work, and you can move on. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's for a marketer, that's kind of a dream. I mean, I look back where I started at with this, there was much different world, and it took a lot longer to produce things, to where now you're carrying basically a live television studio in your pocket. And that's pretty incredible to be able to have that opportunity.
Look at what we're doing here for the software that's $20 a month, and we've got streaming, we got intros, we got live streaming, all that good stuff. And it is fun. I think it gets overwhelming though too, because it today, if you're haven't gone through all this shifts and changes that you have in your career, and you're kind of a newer marketer and maybe new in marketing leadership as well, it's like it's almost, there's an overwhelm of tools and options, and it gets so noisy that it's hard to like stay focused on the things that are actually creating impact.
Oh, absolutely true. I mean, the challenge, like as you point out, there's so much coming at you every day. There's new things popping up. There's, everybody's talking to you from different angles, and there's 1,000 shiny things that are trying to distract you through the course of a day. And this is where I focus, right? It's like, and so I tell other marketers, and when I'm giving lectures or teaching, you got to look at the basics. You've got to know who your audience is and where they're getting their information from. You answer those two questions, the rest of it kind of becomes like an academic exercise to kind of put together the actual plan and which channels you're going to use to go after those markets. But it's so easy to say, wow, the latest thing is now it's TikTok, or it's Twitter is doing this and Facebook is doing that, and we can be doing all these different things, but is that really where your audience is at? And is that where they're going to get information about your particular product? There's a part of social media which is just, it's a time waster. I mean, for example, this is probably about 15 years ago. I was sitting in a room with Meg Whitman, the then CEO of eBay, and her and I, and the CEO and my CEO of the company I was working with, we were talking about some partnerships, and they were saying how at the time about 80%, maybe higher than that, of the people that went just browsed eBay were doing it for entertainment purposes. No intent to buy. They were just looking for, just like what's for sale. So what does that say? If you're a seller on eBay, it's like you literally have tire kickers, but now you've got tens of thousands or millions of tire kickers coming by your, your business every day.
It's like the old version of the news feed that people were consuming for entertainment. That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah, basically what it is. So, and again, and this is what I mean. It's like if you understand the basics of who your market is and how you're going to reach them, that answers probably 80% of the marketing question right there. And then you can just develop the plan based off of that. So, I mean, it comes back to this very basic marketing mantra of know your customer. And the minute you know that customer and you continually study that customer to see if things are pivoting, if things are changing, if they're using a new technology, if they're using new communication channels, any of that, you can then take all of that, roll it into your plan, and then execute against that. And that's really, to me, one of the things I see so many marketers fail on, because they'll get enthralled with, I mean, right now everybody's on TikTok marketing. I mean, and TikTok can be a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of fun going in there just browsing and seeing things. But as a marketing tool, I think from a B2B point of view, I think the jury is still out on some of that. I think it works fine in some industries. I don't know if it works quite well in my industry, but if you're consumer products, it might work really great for you. It just, again, it depends on who you are.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm going to test. I'll report back to you, because I think I'm a B2B marketer and I want to communicate with other B2B marketers. And so I think to myself, like, I'll get lost in an hour on TikTok at the end of the night, just looking at funny videos. I'm like, if I'm doing it, I guarantee other people in my market are doing it. So I'm actually doing a test. I'm creating some micro clips from our podcasts and all that good stuff. I'm going to try hitting TikTok with a video every single day for 60 days straight and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer. That's what you have to do, right? I mean, because what you're talking about is just testing things, and you want to see if something's going to work. And sounds like you've got your ideas down of how you want to do it, and then you're going to execute against it, and then you're going to measure. But I mean, and I would assume you're going to measure as you're going along. You're not going to wait till the end of the 30 days to see what works. You're going to look at it and go, well, it's day one, what happened? Day two, was there any improvements? Day three, was there any improvements over the previous? And look at how those things are trending. And then it gives you that lifespan, and you understand if it's working, if it's not working, how what the engagement is, the length of time between execution to consumer purchasing, all those things. And that's the key to it, right? Is you're constantly monitoring those metrics to see what's going to work for you.
Right, absolutely. So what led young Steve into the world of marketing initially?
It's really
and not to say, and by the way, not to say you're not still a young dude, because I offended a guest the other day with that one. I'm like, that's not what I was saying.
I had somebody, quick story. Somebody the other day was approaching me from someone wanted to make a partnership or something with a plastic surgery company. And go, you should see all the great things that we have here. And I'm going, are you saying I need plastic surgery? What are you getting at? So,
what are you hinting at, brother?
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, what are you really saying? But for me, I was starting off back when I was a teenager and even first couple of years of college. One of the things I was trying to kind of crack into, being from Los Angeles, was the movie and television industry through the back part of the camera. I did not want to be in front of the camera. I wanted to be like a cameraman, a cinematographer, those kind of things. And
director.
Everybody wants to direct. Trust me, everybody wants to direct.
Hartert Industries.
Something. I wanted to be the next Spielberg. At the time, Spielberg was a young man, but
you kind of look like Spielberg a little bit.
Well, we share a similar first name, but that's about the extent of it. I think that's where it begins and ends as far as our similarities. He's got like 1 billion times more talent than I'd ever could think I'd had. But and so anyway, I was working with a friend of mine who was working with an ad agency, and we were shooting commercials. For like a summer, we were doing commercials for, I can't remember the product right now. And I said, this is actually fun, because you're doing, the test was how to put together a story in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And, now they're even shorter, but it's put together a full story of something in a very tight time frame. And there's no leeway. Either you can't do 29, you can't do 31. It's got to be 30 seconds, right? And so I found that fascinating, but I also enjoyed the business part of it, right? Because I also was the analytical person. I was always the one that kept stats for the basketball team and the baseball teams. And my dad coached baseball for like 30 years, and I always kept the scorebooks and did the player stats and all this stuff. And this all predates spreadsheets, so you can see how much fun that was back in the day with a calculator. But the point was, I was fascinated by there's this creative component, but there's this analytical component that comes on the other side of it. And so the creative part was not only like, say, putting together commercials, but you'd be putting together advertising, like print ads. You could be putting together radio ads. You could be doing outdoor billboards, those kinds of things, direct mail. And so this marriage of left brain, right brain really attracted me. And I thought it was so much fun of how this stuff was put together and how companies were doing it. And I started devouring all the information I could get on it while I was a college student, and just kind of came in through a side door when I graduated with a degree in communications with an emphasis in PR and a minor in journalism. And so the writing part of it I dearly loved. But then I went to work in marketing departments and really loved it. Right, I was just a writer for writing publications and writing news releases and all that stuff, and that was so much fun. But I was also writing ad copy, so you've got this dichotomy of writing skills you have to put together. And I knew that this was something I really wanted to do. So from there, I went on and got myself an MBA in marketing, and just the rest of my career has just kind of followed suit along that. But it's been an awful lot of fun, because you can do things that you break ground with something. You might be the first to kind of leverage a new technology that's been out there. Just to give you an example, I think the first time I saw the web was in 1994. I've been using various pieces of it prior to that, but in 1994, they had released what was then, the World Wide Web, and nobody knew what this thing was.
Was it terrifying when you first saw it?
I was absolutely fascinated, because I had been working with people they used to have these things called bulletin board systems to BBSs, and there was AOL was back in the day, CompuServe, all these kinds of things. And they were great for doing research and for just looking for news and those kinds of things. So I used them for those bits and pieces. But when the web came out, I went, this is going to be the great equalizer for businesses, because you no longer, if you're a store, you no longer are selling just what comes in your door. Now you can do mail order around the world without having to put another storefront in New York or London or wherever, right? And I went, this is going to change how businesses operated, because now you've opened yourself up to a couple of billion consumers, no matter what kind of company you are. And I thought, video was going to come around. I mean, this was when QuickTime was giving you postage stamp video that was choppy as all could be, but you just saw where the future was. And I went around the companies. I remember going to probably, I think, just about every car dealership in Southern California and say, let's put your used car dealer, let's put your used cars online. This will be people will shop and they'll buy. People are, I don't want to have those crazy customers just sending me this email. I want them to come to the lot so I can sell them something.
Internet's a fad.
I had more people tell me that, one, the internet's a fad, two, computers were a fad, that they were soon going to burn out, and two, and a lot of people were scared of technology. But I finally found a couple. I found like a half a dozen of them that wanted to do it, and their business went booming, right? They started selling more used cars than they ever sold before. So it was one of these things where you kind of saw over the horizon on where this stuff was going to lead you. And it was just absolutely fascinating. Then you start seeing it happen, right? You just start seeing these things come to life, and just magical when you just saw how this transformation of how business was done. And so this whole thing about how marketing was going to be applied to that, because now there were no more of the traditional channels of like broadcast, direct mail, print. Now there was direct email. Then there were things like, banner ads, and there were things like, SEO, which people didn't even know about. I mean, Google didn't even exist at the early days. It was Yahoo and Excite and all these other ones that have kind of fallen by the wayside. And it was, how do you bring people to your company? And then once you get them there, now what do you do? And so there was this whole marketing wheel that got put into motion on that side of it. And it was, some of it was the Wild West, but other big pieces of it were, there's a very methodical process you have to follow. And it went back to the basics of marketing. You've got to be able to know who your customer is. You got to put information in there. How do you want them to communicate with you? How are you going to respond back to them? All these things. And it just, obviously you can see where we're at today, 25, 26 years later, 26, 27 years later. It's just, I don't think people can even understand what the world was like before then. I think it's almost like before airplanes and after airplanes, almost, because the world has changed so much.
And we forget so quickly. Like, we're so quick as a species, we're so quick to forget things. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's more difficult now, even though there is accessibility, but is it more difficult now to have a breakthrough business that quickly explodes compared, and let me for contrast, I have mentors of mine who have built $100 million companies, $500 million companies, and they used to talk about back in the good old days, you just slap some keywords on your website and you were rolling in the leads. And now you have to do a lot more. But what's your thought on that? Do you think it is more difficult now to break through than if you got on as an early adopter?
No, I don't think so. I think there's still challenges. Don't get me wrong. It's not put up a website and people will come pounding on your door as a result of that. You still have to do it methodically. You still have to understand what you're trying to do. And like you mentioned, SEO, back in the day, you would go to Yahoo and you put in your own descriptions, and and people did this all the time. They would dump keywords into their phraseology. They just basically threw a dictionary in there sometimes, and they would get,
Backlinks and
yeah,
other
all this
sites and all that
stuff, and
craziness.
some of it was so unethical what they were doing, because they would talk, well, the point being is you've got a lot of wasted eyeballs that came to your website,
Mm.
because let's say you're selling, a widget, and somebody's looking for car tires. Well, somebody's coming to your website. You go, great, I got another visitor to the website, but they have never going to buy that product from you. It's just a wasted effort, right? It's no worse than having somebody come in the store and asking you, where's my car tires? Well, we don't sell them here. We sell sweaters, that kind of thing. So there's you can still launch a very successful product, a very successful enterprise on the web. It's just you guys got to be very methodical and very process oriented how you're going to do it, because SEO is a big component, because people just Google, right? I mean, it's become a verb. It's no longer go do this, or I'm going to go do a search, or how do you search. I mean, Google was like the great equalizer on that all of a sudden, 21 years ago when they kind of started up. And so you can do it, but you just got to do it the right way, because if you do it the wrong way, you're going to not you're just not going to be successful, because you're going to get the wrong kind of traffic driven to your website, and people are just going to turn off and go someplace else. B, social media makes it very easy right now for people to complain about you, and you can either make your bones or lose them in a minute out there, because if something happens wrong, you've become a hashtag, and boom, off,
Mm.
there it went, because somebody got angry with you and tried to pull some stunt, and whatever it would be, and now you've got another battle on your hands. So that's what I say. In some respects, it's easy, but another part, it's much difficult, because you've got consumer expectations on how fast people can move away from you if they want to. Right? In the old day, you drove to the shopping center, and whatever was there, that was your reach. And now you're buying things from any corner of the world that you want to get something from. So, um, yeah, just anything else easier in one respect, tougher in others.
So let's break that down a little bit, because something I so much appreciated about the conversation we had the other day, it actually inspired me to create a video that I posted about it, was getting back to the basics. And I think something you've done well compared to a lot of marketers is realizing that there's a reason the basics and the fundamentals are there. And we often forget or don't know how to implement or follow along. And one of the things that we chatted on was marketing plans,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, break that down a bit. What is actually a modern, and speaking of B2B marketers today, what's some genetics of a marketing plan? Effectively how do you effectively develop your marketing plan? How do you effectively stick to your marketing plan? And how do you win at having a marketing plan? I guess this is the question I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a great question, and I think this is something that I think every marketer struggles with this at some time. Is you really have to, and it comes back to in marketing, they teach you the 4 Ps, right? Product, price, place, promotion, but you put the customer at the center of all that. And what you need to do is you got to figure out who that customer is going to be. If you can't define who that customer is, and you may have several types of customers, right? You may be working like in a B2B, and you might have people in healthcare, you might have people in education, government, and governments may be international, local, state, federal, wherever they could be at. And so you've got to define who those customers are and where are they. So that's the first thing. And so you may end up having like 5, 6 really core target markets. So you really want to analyze, go look at your existing sales data and understand, and it's really the 80-20 rule, right? Where is that 80% of your business coming from? And you'll find it's always 20% of your typical kind of customer base is driving all that traffic. So the first thing is to define who that customer is, right? What's their size? Where are they coming from? That kind of stuff. From there, then you look at and go, what channels do they find us through? Is it through Google searches? Is it through social media? Is it through something else that we're doing, direct mail, direct emails? Is it billboards? Is it television? What channels do you use that are drawing those people in? What's driving the sales? And so that's another part of it. And so you start putting all this together, you start walking yourself through those steps, right? And I think you and I had mentioned this prior to this, is when I was in grad school, and I still have this, one of my marketing professors gave us this flow chart of follow these steps and you will have a marketing plan. And it really comes down, it starts at the 4 Ps and it just spiders out from there. So when you're talking about, you start looking at, placement, right? Like that's the old days, right? Because it's a store, is it direct mail, those kinds of things. Well, you may be like a SaaS service like JotForm is, and where's your place? You're on the internet. Well, you start figuring out how people are getting to your product, where they're purchasing your product, how they're buying your product, all that kind of stuff. And then you start winding these things back, and you just start just looking at those steps of where somebody's coming in. So let's just say you're selling water glasses, okay, just pick something out. Where are they selling at? What sizes? What colors? How are they finding you? You start putting all of that together just in bullet points. You've probably got 30% of your plan kind of start putting the bones of it are put together right there. Now you start fleshing out where can I sell this through? Am I going to sell it directly? Am I going to have some third party vendor selling, acting like a drops, like a drop for me, right? I'll give them to them and they'll ship them out for me, those kinds of things. How you start putting all of that together, right? You start just methodically piecing this flow together because you just start answering questions. And there's about, I think I want to say there's like 30 questions on this flow chart.
Just to pause you real quick. So, flow chart as in here's the piece and then the line connects to the other piece here. And that's
Right.
where those two components go. And your suggestion for marketers is getting that down on paper
Right.
in a way that is not just maybe not bulleted out, but more visually how it actually flows together, how
Yep.
X leads to Y, leads to Z, and so on.
Yeah, oh, no, exactly. Because when you start putting it out like that, when you start actually writing it, you start thinking about it. And sometimes as you think about it, you'll realize this is a dead end. We can't do anything. So part of this is an exercise, a mental exercise, but you can even do this at the outline version of this is say, if we want to do these 3 channels, what are the pros and cons to each of these, right? How are the competitors going to react when we start doing this? What's our messaging going to look like? What channels can we use this message more effectively than others? And so each one of these questions, like I say, there's like 30 questions, but each one of those 30 questions might have 5 questions underneath it that you're going to have to answer for yourself. And so when you start just going down this list and start answering these things, and it may be a paragraph, it may be 2 pages, it may be 10 pages, but you start thinking about every piece of that journey you're going to have to make between idea of how we're going to market to the execution and measurement of that. When you put all of that together, the plan just puts itself together, honestly, because those are the guideposts you follow. And so it just encompasses all of that. And so when you look at media, let's say you're going to look at TikTok, for example, as a channel, you would say, how are we going to measure the effectiveness of this? Right? That's the thing. What are we going to say once we're on TikTok? What are we going to do? We were limited to 60 seconds of video. What can we do in 60 seconds? How effective can it be? What's going to be our call to action? What do we want? And then when they get to our website, what do we want them to do? So those could be some things right there. They want them to, when all that starts to put together, you have to think about what's going to happen at every step of that process, right? We were doing an event about 4 years ago for a product launch. And I said to the team, what are we going to do when somebody walks in the store? What do we want them to do when they come to this venue? What do we want them to see? And when they come in, once they get, like, they sign in, they get their name badge and they go off to mingle, then what? What's going to be on the walls? What's going to be on the tables? What's going to be, what are we going to do presentation at the beginning of it, the middle of it, the end of it? What, if we had monitors, what's going to be on the monitors? What do we want people to do? How do we want people talk to us? What are we going to talk to them about? And so you have to sit there and think about the entire process. And really, the thing is, you don't want to leave anything to chance, because when the minute you ignore a piece of it, you're opening yourself up to a problem. And so you have to take that step back and look at every step of this marketing, this marketing activity. And so when you're thinking about what's our product going to be, well, how much can our company manufacture, right? So if you're a traditional manufacturing company, our capacity might be, say, 10,000 units a month. Okay, well, that means we can't sell 12,000 because we just can't build them, and you're going to have 2,000 very angry customers if you could sell everything you have, right? And so you have to stop and think about how this is going to work. What's our shipping cost going to be if we have to ship things out? What's our average, if it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to market in these channels, what kind of ROI can we expect? Right? Because trust me, one thing I learned quick is the finance and accounting people are going, all right, you want to spend $1 in marketing, how much is this going to make us back? Right? Because they look at it as, I can put $1 in the bank and tomorrow I know exactly how much that dollar grew. I can buy $1 of stock and I'll tell you exactly how much that stock is worth tomorrow. They expect the same kind of return thought from a marketer. And if you
what if I'm just like, Steve, I've got it all up here. Like, I know what our plan is, our vision. It's very simple. Why document it out? What would be the point of that?
Well, there's a couple of things I will say. One thing, it might be in your mind, but what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? That marketing plan goes with you, right? The second thing is, when you actually start putting the thing on paper, it takes on a whole different life, because now it's actually becoming real. So as you start writing this out, you start to think about, if we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to have to do these 5 steps, we got to do so doing that, the plan becomes very realistic. It's one thing to have it in your mind, because that's where it's going to all start anyway, but you've got to go through the process of putting that on paper. And once you start to put all that on paper and start writing it out and start putting all this together and start just thinking through the process, you will start seeing what's going to work, and we didn't think this thing quite through, and we need to go back and rethink this thing, because when we don't have the money for it, the time, we don't have enough time to do it, or 3, it's like, we don't have the product to sell in Canada, for example, right? We don't have the product to sell in Australia. You've got to start looking at those boundaries and where you can actually play as a marketer, where you can actually work within. And so this is when you start writing this thing out, it becomes very realistic. And that's really where I think where people fall down. They go, yeah, I've got all this in my head, it's no problem, I can remember this. Well, look, sometimes I forget what I had for breakfast this morning, just because your day gets going and you get busy. But when you write it down, you kind of commit yourself to something.
And when should you be recommitting yourself? Like, once a year during Christmas time, is that when I should rewrite my marketing plan for the next year? Or, what kind of, when should I be developing my marketing plan?
Your marketing plan should be getting revised almost every day, because new things, I'm not saying you're going to rewrite the whole plan, but there's going to be pieces of it that you're going to look at, because you've got the metrics are coming in real time now. That's how good the tools are. So you can look at something and say, all right, let's just say you're running a Google ad, or let's just talk about something on TikTok. You can look at, I'm running something on TikTok. How good is this working for me? So you can measure it every day. You can measure it several times a day. You can see how it's performing for you, and you can see if it's driving that traffic back for you that you want to have. You don't wait till the end of the year to go back and go, well, okay, what worked, what didn't work. That's way too late, and you might have walked yourself off of a very steep cliff in the process, and then you're never going to come back from that.
Which I think most people end up kind of doing things that way. It's like, in hindsight's 2020, right?
Oh, all the time. And this is, look, there's a reality out there where we're all busy. We all have 1,000 things going on around us at any given time. But you have to figure out what are the most important metrics you need to be measuring every day, and build a dashboard of those. So then you can go back and you can pull that dashboard up at points, whether it's the beginning of the day, you want to see how it worked from last night, or the end of the day to see how the day went. But you need to look at those metrics and see what's performing, what's not. I always say it's like driving a car, right? I mean, when you drive, you get behind the wheel, you're studying your metrics of the road. You're looking at your speed, you're looking at your gas level, you're looking at
Mm.
your engine temperature, you're looking at road conditions. Who's the idiot ahead of me that's going 30 in a 45 zone? Those kind of things. And so you're measuring the
I'm the
metrics.
opposite. I'm the idiot going 45 in a
Well,
30 zone.
I love following behind you guys because that's much easier for me to deal with.
Because then I'll get pulled over first. And if you're speeding a little bit, then you'll be safe at least.
Oh,
Or at least that's how my mind
I
justifies it.
tell my kids, look, if you're going to speed, that's your business. I'm not paying your speeding tickets, but always make sure there's at least one or two people going faster than you. That's all I tell them, because that's the guy that's going to get the ticket, and it won't be you. But I mean, say we measure metrics all the time and everything we're doing, whether it's say driving. But at marketers, you got to be measuring your metrics constantly. You want to look at page views, right? You can go to Google. If you're just driving people to a website, you can look at your page views, and you can see how people are coming to your site, how long they're staying at your site, where they journeying through your site, all those kinds of things. And if they're not doing what you want them to do, it tells you we've got a gap here we need to fill. They're coming to the website, but they're bouncing after 3 seconds. So what's wrong? Is our call to action not sufficient? Is our offer not sufficient? Are we burying the lead? Is there too much information? Is there not enough? So there's a lot of different things that you can do, that you can test as you're going along to see what's working. So you can run A/B tests, you can do all sorts of stuff. But the thing is, you're constantly changing these knobs and the dials. Think of it like an old switching board, right? You're constantly moving dials and moving knobs to make things better. And that's what you should be doing on a daily basis, because you may find out that, wow, this one ad is performing a lot better than this other one. Let's run it, 3 times more than the other one and see how that performs. And you may find out, yeah, it is working. This other one just doesn't. It's not effective. Well, and that's fine. Things don't work. Not everything's going to work like gold every time. But if that's the case, dump it and move on. Don't wait till the end of the year to find out that, oh yeah, that really didn't work, and I'm sorry we wasted $10 million in advertising dollars. That's we'll do better this year. That's not going to fly.
I totally agree. I think that's even though it's like, it sounds a little bit like, okay, yeah, I know this, it's basics, but I'm me myself and even the worst at this. Like, I'm not revisiting. I'll write a marketing plan at the beginning of the year, but am I revisiting that sucker every day and iterating on it and actually physically changing it? Yeah, there's some dispersed areas. I'm tracking data and all that good stuff, but your stance is get back to the basics of your marketing plan, but in the constantly dynamic changing world that we live in the especially in the marketing world, revisit that sucker constantly, iterate on it, constantly change it, constantly create new plans.
Yeah, you have to be able to. Your plan should be fluid enough that you can adjust on the fly if you need to. I mean, there's some things. Obviously, there's some costs if you're doing television and you're doing those kinds of things that are expensive. You may be into it for a while, but then those have a longer uptake before sometimes you see you'll see a response to it, right? So you got to build that into your plan. Like, we're going to run this for 3 weeks, measure how it's going, and then if it works, we'll go another 3 weeks. If it doesn't work, we'll cut our losses at week 3 and move on to something else. And it's not like you're doing a wholesale writing of the plan, because you still have the core. You're still trying to sell 10 million units of your product and generate this much revenue, and you understand where it's going to be, right? So when I say you write your plan, you write a plan and say, in January we're going to do this, in February we're doing this, March, every month of the year you've got everything kind of sketched out where you want it to be. You know what products are launching, what their timeframes are going to be, what you're going to have to do. And then really, when you have that kind of luxury of a full year ahead of you, you can program, like I say, every month, every week, almost to the day, that on this day we have to have this done, this day we have to have that done, so you can see how your work schedule is going to be looking like. But on top of that is you have to put in the metrics, the measurement pieces of it, right? If you're going to be putting out, you're going to put a bunch of advertising on something like, let's just say TikTok again, or you're going to put a bunch of Google ads. You don't wait till 6 months down the road and go, did that work for us? You should be measuring that every day, if not at least twice a day, just to go back and see what's working, because you may find that mornings are better than afternoons, nights are better than evenings, right? Or late nights better than early evening. You might find out that Thursdays are better than Saturdays, those kinds of things. And if that happens, then you adjust your plan accordingly, but you have to have enough flexibility in that plan to be able to make those kinds of moves. And that's
And
and that's
from a,
something that I push back. People just kind of forget that. They think part of it is because by the time you actually launch the plan, you're just mentally exhausted from the creation of that plan, and you're just
100%.
I'm done with it. Let's move on. But that's really the launch of that plan is the first part of it. The second part of it, and I always call this the shampoo method, right? It's lather, rinse, repeat. You have to constantly keep going back, evaluate, check it, and move and do it again. And it becomes this loop that you're just kind of doing all this while you've got this bigger loop going on around it. And in the
Because you
bigger
don't
loop is
just bathe once a year, hopefully, or
well,
once a month.
I think some people do, but that's a whole nother topic. But
Repeat that again. Repeat. What would you call it? What was the method called?
I call it the shampoo method, right?
Shampoo
It's
method.
lather, rinse, repeat. It's you just constantly just you're in motion with this thing all the time. You
Mm.
launch the plan, you evaluate the plan, you make changes, and then you start the process all over again. So and that's moving. So it's like you've got this little wheel moving instead of a much bigger wheel. And as you're doing all of this, the big wheel continues to move, but you're trying to increase that speed by making that smaller wheel, and you might have several of them, much more efficient in the overall marketing plan. Because if you're going after, say, 3 or 4 different kinds of markets at one time for a single product, well, all 3 or 4 of those have to kind of work in conjunction with each other. And that, again, that's part of the challenge of all this, is to get all of that to kind of mesh together and work.
And from a psychology perspective, you can't hit targets that you can't see. And often us marketers forget that we're there for revenue generation at the end of the day, right? We're there to
Yeah,
grow sales. So if in my mind, I'm thinking about, okay, we got to sell 10 million units this year, but you're not revisiting that in the micro steps to get there, then you're not going to hit the target. You can't hit targets that you can't
right.
see. And we're not just there to get likes and nice comments on our LinkedIn posts or cool feedback on our podcast. At the end of the day, we're there to get sales in the door.
Right. And that's honestly, that's the bottom line, is you have to be able to generate revenue. If you cannot generate revenue through your marketing plan, they will find somebody who will. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, there's different pieces of marketing. This is to build awareness. This is to build, credibility. This is to build just eyeballs on a YouTube video or whatever it might be. There's a piece of that. And there's a piece of that throughout every marketing plan that you do and every marketing execution. But the bigger thing is you've got to make that cash register ring.
Mm.
And that's how you're going to be judged at the end of the year. People can say,
So
yeah, we got 1 million likes. That's great. But how does that turn into revenue for us?
So for JotForm, before we wrap up here, what are the top 2 things that are crushing it for you from a marketing perspective this year with JotForm?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, but I think the two of the big ones that have been massively effective for JotForm. One,
Most effective, crushing it. You can lean
SEO.
on. People are
SEO.
excited
SEO.
about.
SEO by far has been one of our best things. We've got a team of people that and these guys are fantastic. They're the team that puts this together. They're so good at what they do, and they understand every nuance of it all, right? So we can look at it and go, these are keywords that are trending for us. These are words that are not. This is people are finding us. This is the words that are working. This is how they're doing our competitors, down the whole line. And so based on that, then we can write content that can help reflect that type of SEO component. So, because again, people they go to the internet and they're not looking necessarily for JotForm. They're looking for a form, and they may say, I need a registration form. And when they just put in some very basic term, it's got to pull JotForm to the top of that list. And that's what we've been able to do, right? But you've got to have this massive ecosystem of SEO, which is the second part of it, through our content. We've got a really, really super talented team of content writers that work for us, and they produce, some great blog posts, landing pages. What do you think about, right? From PR perspective to just, on the JotForm blog, they write really, really great pieces of content, and it can be anywhere from 250 words to 10,000 words. And we're not talking
Wow.
just a piece, right?
Is the content written mostly to emphasize the SEO efforts, or are you writing it mostly for communication efforts, or is
Uh,
it kind of a combo of the two?
Probably a combo of the two. I mean, there's some things that are very distinctive. There's a point we're trying to push out. So there's stuff that's very focused because this is very extremely JotForm oriented. But there's other parts of it that it might just be business tips. right? If you're looking to put together like a marketing plan, where are the steps you want to follow, right? Because people are going to find that content. They're looking, I want to find a marketing plan. I got to write one. And they'll go, oh, this is produced by some company called JotForm. Oh, this is kind of cool. Let me check and see what they have. And they'll click on our link, and next thing you know, they're a customer of ours. So there's all this periphery stuff that points back to us at the same time. But all of that content, right, is driven by some of the SEO pieces of it. So these two pieces are, they're two gears that work together. And those are, they've been massive drivers for us. I mean, we do things, we do a lot of advertising and other bits and pieces, of marketing parts, but I really think it's the SEO.
SEO's crushing it.
SEO is doing just incredibly well for us. And
does Google AdWords help with the SEO, like running Google AdWords?
Yeah, it does. I mean, Google AdWords,
doing?
Yeah, Google AdWords can be very effective done in the right way, and I think we do it the right way. So that's one thing that benefits us too. But again, it comes down to an SEO component, right? People are going in there looking for something that just says registration form, and God forbid we're number 5 on that list, but a Google ad will pop up next to it, right? And then so people see us that way, and then they can find us like that. So those are really two ways to do it. And again, this is where people think, oh, I don't have budgets for television. I don't have budgets for all. You can put together 10 words, right? You can write. People can write. You'd not go hire a writer, because this is the stuff that's very important.
Guys, hire us at ActiveBlogs. We'll write your content for you. Okay.
I just did a pitch for you. So there you go. Yeah, there you go.
My man.
But you understand this, right? This is a fundamental piece of it, and this is how the internet kind of works at its core, is having this. What's going to drive traffic? How are people going to find you when they don't know what they're looking for? And that's really what it comes down to. Some people, they come in there, they've never heard of JotForm, they've never heard of some of our competitors, and they just know, I have a problem, right? I need a form, I need a registration form, I need an e-commerce form, I need just a form. I don't know what kind. And then they see this, and they see there's a list of things, and they go, oh, I could use one of these. I could use one of these. I didn't know this was there. So now there's this problem that they didn't know, and now there's a solution for it. And now we're off to the races with this person.
Well, I think the tricky part too in today's world is Google search mandates also fresh, relevant, ongoing content. It's never you've got the perfect website and all of a sudden the leads start flowing in. So that's where people really get stuck, is getting great content out there that people are searching, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Ask your clients what questions they have. Ask your sales team what questions they're getting in the sales process, and write content around that.
That's exactly what we do. I tell our sales people all the time, and they're, again, very good at their jobs. And I say, what are you guys hearing back from customers? What kind of phrases are they using? What kind of terminology are they using? What specific pain points are they looking to have something addressed? Because that, again, as you just point out, drives content. Because if they have this problem, somebody else is going to have the same problem. And now we can start selling it to multiple people as a result of that. And so, again, this is what it comes back to: is you have your ear to the ground, you're understanding your customers. And these are not current customers, these are potential customers, but at least we're engaged with them. And now we can start picking their brains and find out what it is that they want, and what can we solve? What problem of theirs can we solve for them? And that's the battle, right? People don't come looking for things just because they want. I mean, people go to the grocery store because they're hungry. The problem is, I'm hungry. What do I solve it?
You should never go to the grocery store when you're hungry.
That's word one. But again, that's what people go there for. I'm going to have a problem on Tuesday. I need dinner. And I don't have anything to eat, so I'm going to have to go find something. So this is where people, is problem solution. So we look at things in that interaction with our potential customers at this point, helps drive that content, because we track all of that back and then say, wow, a lot of people are asking about this. Let's get some content put up on the web to address this, because if they can't be the only ones in the world looking for this solution, there's going to be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of others doing the same thing. I mean, we found, for example, we've got Fortune 25 companies that are working with us, our JotForm customers. We also have like small mom and pop bakeries. They look at it and they go, we need a registration form because we want to have a contest. Now, a registration form for a large entertainment company, right, is massively different than what a mom and pop bakery wants. But the problem is the same problem, right? We want to get customers to register for our contest. What are we going to do? it's funny. You look at it and go, here's somebody's probably doing $100,000 a year in revenue. Someone doing $100 million in revenue. They have the exact same business problem they're trying to address. It's sometimes the scale is different, but at the core, it's the same problem.
So the way you're niching is the general problems that any customer would pretty much have versus specific to bakeries or specific to, XY industry, because they have the same problem.
Right, exactly.
And you guys have figured that out. You've solved what that problem is.
And this comes back to know your customers. When you know your customers, you can then start producing. So this comes back to that 4 Ps, right? Once you know who they are, you know what their problems are within each of those things, what their challenges are day to day. How do we address that from a marketing perspective? And then the marketing plan just starts to spin itself out, and it writes itself at that point. So those are the kinds of things that I think most marketers just kind of forget. They're so hurried trying to I got to get this out today. I got to get this done today. They're not looking over the horizon. They're just looking at what's immediately in front of them. And as marketers, it's incumbent on us to be looking, obviously what we're doing today is important, but how does this fit into what we're doing next month, next year? Because what we're doing today is going to impact next month and next year. And those are big things, because you can't unwind those that easily.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap this thing up. Steve, I can't thank you enough, man. This has been an absolute blast. What would be the best way for people find you, follow you, get into contact with you?
Probably through LinkedIn is probably the best way to do it. There's a lot of people I love interacting with on LinkedIn. There's a lot of great, just my brothers and sisters in marketing are really wonderful to kind of swap ideas with out there. So I would say find me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find my name. Just look for I think I'm the only Steve Hartert on all of LinkedIn, which is kind of unique. So it's easy to find me there. But that's it. I mean, I don't really do any other social medias on a personal level. I do them for business purposes. So that's the way to get me. Until
you start directing movies here in the
when I push Spielberg off to the side and I direct Jaws 15 or whatever they're coming out with, that'll be my next step. Yeah.
Let's see it. Steve, thank you. Guys, make sure you go connect with Steve. He's sharing great information, great insights. This is free to you. So if you found any value in this whatsoever, share it with other folks. Give Steve a little love. Get some exposure for him. Steve, stick around for one quick second while we wrap up here. And also, do not forget, go to iTunes, leave a 5-star review. You can find us on all your favorite podcast apps. If you have guests you recommend, topics you want to see on the show, always feel free to send me a DM. I respond to all of them. I love hearing from you guys. Much love to you. Make it great. And we will see you on the other side.